Attorney Arthur Redgrave is a partner at Redgrave & Rosenthal, LLP, located at 120 East Palmetto Park Road, Suite 400, Boca Raton, Florida, 33432. Phone number 561-347-1700. He committed legal malpractice, fraud, and conspiracy to rob my inheritance, I believe, based on my evidence. I am presently suing him, and in my opinion, this short film proves my claim. After viewing this video, please contact me at phone number 201-759-3042 to discuss it. My parents lived, worked, and raised me in New Jersey. I lived with them until I retired to Florida. They sold our home in Englewood, New Jersey, and bought a condo in Boca Raton, Florida in 1981. Although I owned a small business and was self-employed and remained in New Jersey, I always stayed in close contact with them. On October 20th, 1998, which was my father's 83rd birthday, he executed his will which divides his wealth to my mother, and when she passed, everything was left to me. At this time, my mother had a bad stroke and was bedridden, unable to speak, walk, or care for herself. She never recovered and required a live-in nurse until her death on April 27, 2005. My father was diagnosed as legally blind in 2002 and enlisted help from his cousin, Elaine Russell, who lived close by. Mrs. Russell brought in her friend, Joy Corbo, to help with daily chores such as food shopping and paying bills. When my father discovered that Joy Corbo had stolen from him, he got rid of her and Elaine Russell filled in. Between 2003 and 2005, my father's Parkinson's disease and dementia really progressed. Elaine Russell patiently waited for either one of my parents to pass away so she could rob my inheritance. The very day my mother died, she immediately went into action and took my father to the doctor's office, even though he had no specific medical complaints. Her only concern was his ability to change his will to benefit her. She enlisted attorney Arthur Redgrave to conspire with her in order to get this accomplished. This is my story. The following facts and documents were gathered during my will contest against Elaine Russell, which I prevailed in. All of the evidence proves that my father never wished to make any changes to his will and had absolutely no contact whatsoever with attorney Arthur Redgrave, who permitted the personal representative, Elaine Russell, to exercise undue influence upon my father for her benefit. There is absolutely no mention anywhere about my father requesting to anyone to make changes to his will in any of the reports, interoffice mail, or any other documents. These documents all show that it is only Elaine Russell who was involved with the attorney and his secretary in the changes to the will, all of which enrich Elaine at my detriment. Neither Arthur Redgrave nor his secretaries, who were the witnesses, can recall any definitive details about my father ever being at the office. These documents make clear that on 4 different dates between April 27th, my mother's death, and September 19th, the bogus will change, that Elaine made statements regarding her dire concern about my ability to contest my father's will. Unbelievably, Arthur Redgrave arranged the will change anyway. The original will and trust dated October 20th, 1998, reflects my father's true intentions since my father was lucid and competent at this time. Everything was left to my mother, and if she passed, then everything would go to me, his only son. The bogus will change was done 7 years later while my father suffered from dementia and was legally blind and 90 years old. Take note that Article 4 now replaces me with Elaine Russell as beneficiary. My name is not even placed anywhere on this new will, only the trust agreement. Mr. Redgrave's deposition and the 2-page 4s of this bogus new will are also very interesting. The fact that my father's initials are in 2 different places should have automatically invalidated the will. Mr. Redgrave even testified in his deposition, quote, "I'd be shocked if the original had 2-page 4s," end quote. It reinforces the fact that my father never had the will read to him, nor did he sign it in front of at least 2 witnesses. They would have surely caught the mistake, which invalidates the will change. A beneficiary should never be present and influential at a will execution. Elaine Russell actually admitted in her deposition taken on December 2, 2009, that not only was she present during the execution of the second will, but she said to Arthur Redgrave to, quote, make sure it can't be contested, end quote. In other words, make sure that I can't contest it. This statement was ignored by Arthur Redgrave, and he went ahead with the fraudulent will change anyway, which was done only at Elaine Russell's urging, in which Arthur Redgrave was fully aware and at fault. The specific concern by Elaine Russell about my father's mental ability to change his will in her favor to where it can't be contested is also reflected on page 1 of a 3-page report dated April 27, 2005 by Dr. Lauren M. Graff. Although my father was in a nursing home and had no complaints, it says Elaine Russell was concerned about his cognitive difficulties. This was the date of my mother's death, and Elaine Russell wasted no time since my mother needed to be out of the picture in order for Elaine to manipulate the will to benefit herself. On page 3 of the second 3-page doctor report by Dr. Lauren Graff dated June 30, 2005, he wrote that Elaine was concerned that my father wanted to make changes to his will and that she was concerned that these changes could be contested. This exact sentiment is expressed on August 16, 2005 in an interoffice letter from Legal Secretary Carol Blank to her boss, Attorney Arthur Redgrave. Carol Blank wrote that Elaine called and said she wants to make sure his changes can't be contested. During Elaine Russell's deposition on December 2, 2010, she reviewed this document and then actually perjured herself by denying that she called Carol Blank to have the will changed to her benefit. She also lied about the fact that she mentioned Mr. Frieda's memory loss and that she wanted to make sure the will cannot be contested. This letter alone should have been enough to halt Arthur Redgrave. In a letter to Carol Blank from Arthur Redgrave, Mr. Redgrave details Elaine Russell's wishes for Carrie to print up and reflects an urgency to have it done quickly due to my father's rapidly declining mental and physical health. This document further proves undue influence, legal malpractice, and conspiracy committed by Arthur Redgrave. Elaine Russell made all of the appointments for my father to see the attorney and doctors in order to change his will. She arranged everything, and nowhere in any of the documents does it state that my father ever communicated with Mr. Redgrave, the doctors, or anyone else. The will changes were Elaine's doing under the authority, supervision, and guidance of Arthur Redgrave. Elaine Russell arranged every single aspect of these changes, which included having Arthur Redgrave send the new will to her house so she could approve it. Elaine Russell even wrote out the 2 checks for payment of this will change. Why couldn't my father sign these checks if he was supposedly lucid enough to make changes to his will? Just to show Elaine Russell's lack of character and true intentions, the next 3 documents prove that she made conscious efforts to steal my father's extensive art collection. When I brought a will contest against Elaine Russell, she had to submit an appraisal of all my father's artwork. In a 2-page document by Adar Inc. on July 9, 2007, all the items were appraised for $13,250. Elaine Russell verified that this was the truth. She was unaware that I had filmed everything in the condo and also had an appraisal done by S. Alwyn Coyne and Associates just a few months earlier on March 3, 2007. This report totals $67,475. In a follow-up report by S. Alwyn Coyne and Associates on June 30, 2009, Sandra Coyne subtly explains that Elaine Russell committed theft and perjury because all of the most expensive pieces were not included in her appraisal that she submitted and swore to under penalty of perjury. My mother died on April 27, 2005 in the hospital while my father was in a nursing home. I had visited my parents a week earlier, and my father was 90 years old, blind, and suffering from Parkinson's disease and dementia. He barely recognized me and was talking incoherently. At this time, on April 23, 2005, the nursing home report states that my father's cognitive skills for daily decision-making was poor and he couldn't determine the current season or the location of his room. Elaine Russell was the one who would take my ailing father to the doctor. My father had complained of dizzy spells previously before he entered the nursing home, but Elaine Russell never followed up with the appointments addressing that concern. On the very day that my mother died, though, Elaine Russell took my father to this particular doctor for the sole purpose to determine if he was competent enough to make drastic changes to his will, which benefited herself at my expense. This was reflected in Dr. Lauren M. Graff's deposition. Her only concern, now that my mother had passed away only hours ago, was to get the will changed to her benefit. Elaine Russell called attorney Arthur Redgrave on August 16th, and he got it done for her very quickly on September 19th. The depositions and all other documents completely reinforce fraud and conspiracy by Arthur Redgrave and Elaine Russell. My father passed away on June 1st, 2007. I am his only surviving son, and my father had intended to leave everything to me as it was stated in his 1998 will, since my mother predeceased my father in 2005. My father's cousin, Elaine Russell, was the personal representative, and I have additional evidence that attorney Arthur Redgrave allowed and assisted her in using undue influence in order to deny me of hundreds of thousands of dollars of my inheritance. The bogus will that Arthur Redgrave had illegally printed up at Elaine Russell's request unlawfully enriched her at my expense. The fraudulent execution that took place on September 19, 2005, and negated my father's true intentions, which he expressed in his October 20, 1998 will. This evidence was gathered during my will contest against Elaine Russell, which I had filed immediately after my father's death, and it was concluded in February 2011. I learned about Arthur Redgrave's illegal actions against me and my father's estate only after reviewing the depositions. This will contest resulted with Elaine Russell turning the entire estate over to me because the evidence showed that the revised will was void. This legal battle forced me to incur losses which included legal fees, property values, and back rent. I am also seeking punitive damages. I will be making a sequel to this film after Palm Beach County Circuit Court rules on the motion by Mr. Redgrave to dismiss the fraud and conspiracy claims made against him in my complaint. The motion is scheduled for January 20th, 2015. Unbelievably, at the last minute on January 16th, 2015, I found out that Judge Fine retired and the new judge, Jessica Tickton, was hearing my case. I appeared with my attorney, Robert Pentangelo, Esquire, on a motion filed by the attorney for the defendants, Redgrave and Rosenthal, LLC, and Arthur Redgrave, Esquire, individually before Judge Jessica Tickton of the Palm Beach County Circuit Court. The attorney representing the defendants was William Martin, Esquire, of the firm of Peterson Bernard, 707 Southeast 3rd Avenue, Suite 500, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33316. Judge Tickton threw out the counts for fraud and conspiracy against Arthur Redgrave and his firm on a technicality, saying that the plaintiff had not sufficiently alleged the claims for fraud and conspiracy against the lawyers. I am shocked by this decision. I attach a copy of the complaints. Read them for yourself and decide if it is not crystal clear what Arthur Redgrave and Elaine Russell did and how they planned and cooperated to deprive me of my inheritance and con my late father. However, even Mr. Redgrave's own attorney had to admit that the count for legal malpractice was properly pleaded, and the case will go forward full speed ahead on that count. Finally, if you or any friend, family member, or acquaintance has been victimized or is being victimized by malpractice, fraud, or undue influence involving the firm of Redgrave and Rosenthal or any law firm, realtor, stockbroker, accountant, or caregiver, or private individual in Florida, please call me at 201-759-3042, and I may be able to help. Let's fight fraud in Florida together. Thank you.